Well, good morning, Rose. How's it going today?
I am just fine, very eager to talk about disruption, classroom disruption, fixing education.
Comes natural to us.
Yes,
So,
it does, by nature, by our nature.
thanks for joining me in this conversation. And I think uh, where I'd like to begin is with some brief introductions. I mean, after all, we have many conversations together. This one's being recorded. I'm going to offer this to my students and all of the students at Truro University, and hopefully others who will decide to eavesdrop on us professionally. So, to be brief about it, I think between the two of us, easily we have more than a century of experience in the field of education. And we've both been through the trenches. We've both spent almost all of our time in the field dealing with inner city education. I was an inner city classroom teacher for about 18 years. Then I went on to the Central District of the New York City public school system, where I was a staff developer and a curriculum developer and a program director. And eventually, for 7 years before I retired, I was the head of STEAM education. And then I went and started teaching on the university level, Fordham University, New York Institute of Technology, and for the past bunch of years, happily at Truro University. So I think that's enough from me. And on your end, what have you been up to in this lifetime?
Okay, so what haven't I been up to? I am a classroom teacher essentially, but I went from classroom of taught all grade levels, usually Title I schools, workshopping and then presenting my ideas to other teachers throughout the city. That eventually became something that I did and do still nationally. I also worked in districts running LRE things, Project Legal, ESL divisions. I worked nationally presenting. I became part of the NCTE network as you became part of the lead ISTE network. I then became a coach. I also became a full working partner of the Pennsylvania Council for Social Studies, although I'm seen as a literacy person, but I have dual licenses in that. And I became a coach, but not a coach sitting on the side in a school, but a coach collaborating, teaching, sharing, and developing and bringing joyous disruption to fix education into schools, which I continue to do. But most of all, I'm going to end with I am a teacher. I am in the classroom listening to and riffing off children. And that is what I most enjoy. And when I do all the other things, I bring to that the synergy of working with children, working currently in schools. But like you, I have mostly a background lengthy in Title I populations, although I have traveled nationally and worked with private school, privileged populations, special ed, etc. Let's get on to our talk.
All right. So, what brings us here? Well, for years, Rose, you and I each have had a massive amount of professional literature, media news, announcements, all sorts of professional stuff deposited in our email inbox and our social media info stream. And habitually, each of us skims through this looking for gems and we habitually as well, when we find a real gem, we will send it, email it usually to the other partner here. I send you, I don't know, half a dozen things a week. You send me similar amount with a little explanation why this thing is really significant and worth stopping to think about. And so we're going to continue with that today, only we're having a face-to-face virtual conversation about a number of things. And one particular filter, this really is the point. There's so much great stuff shared online about education, but the particular filter we're interested in is what we've come to call classroom disruption. Disruption in the sense that it's ways that schools provide education that need serious change, and that we see announcements about how that change is happening, or the great potential, the resource for it to happen, or something like that. And so each of us is contributing a couple of items out of a great many that have appeared over the past few weeks. So let me share the screen now. There we go. And here we are. So, and I've come up with this motto that you've contributed to as well, that classroom disruption is well, the way we see it as fixing education is simply that every school should provide every kid with an opportunity to connect with something wonderful, inspiring, and intellectually nourishing every day. And maybe you'd like to give a 2 cents before we jump into the very first item, or maybe not.
Well, I just want to add that wonderful, which is a word I tend to overuse in my real life. I've always seen the wonder and the wonderful in things, but wonderful could also mean not necessarily happy, but substantive, real world. Some of the real world things that we need to disrupt education for to talk about aren't wonderful. There's violence happening to kids, and safety issues, and illnesses and dangers, and some of that has to be brought into the school. Whether we and that's I would say wonderful and necessary and substantive for real life. That's all I'd add.
Yeah, well, you've always been focused, as have I, on relevance. So we're
Yes.
not talking about a situation in which a teacher cajoles, even with good intent, cajoles a class of kids to kind of bite the bullet and suffer through a really boring lesson so that they get a pizza par party at the end of it. And we're talking about something much more disruptive and profoundly not only meaningful but workable, worthwhile than that. So the first item, number one here, is something I've selected. It comes out of you can see the date. This comes out of eSchool News just a week ago, and the headline is "The Cure for the School Attendance Crisis: Family Support and a Sense of Belonging." And the subtext is the chronic absenteeism rate has increased post-pandemic, a clear indicator that the problem isn't letting up anytime soon. So kudos to eSchool News for calling this out. Yeah, we offer kids an education through this huge extended institution of public school. And there's a tremendous number of kids increasingly who don't show up for it. And so, in terms of this being the cure, I like what they're saying, family support and and a sense of belonging. And but you know, we've always had this thought that, yeah, we'll get the kids to school if the parents will force the kid to go to school. And yeah, I love the idea of a sense of belonging, but that sure is hard to generate. And so I have a few items I've included here that speak to this, but maybe, I don't know, do you want to make a comment before I share these two things?
Yes, I think it's wonderful. Again, it's verbiage and it's good verbiage. Yeah, we want families to feel, but how do we concretely and without spending money, how do we project or exude or make the school desirable that the kid gets up every morning and they want to go there? They need to go there. And I think that some of the things that, I will be talking about later, but it's also making it welcoming, recognizing the population that we have, and using, I think, perhaps in some way, I don't know what you listed, all of your details. I hope I'm not anticipating them, using students to bring other students in, having a student government, using events, real events, using real things that recognize, for instance, there was one community where the kids weren't going to school because they couldn't get their clothes washed. And that community installed a washing machine and free access for the families. There are certain communities where kids, and I've worked in them, can't go to school during the very cold winter because they don't have anything other than a sweatshirt. And then we brought in coats, and so done by kids, and outreach to parents. And in the particular Ditmas, there are people calling the parent, talking with them in their language, events. Those are the types of things, making a kid wants to come to school to be part of something, get up and go, a purpose and an intent that's the population.
Well, I will take issue with a couple of things you said in a certain way, but first, uh, by the way, all of these articles and other things we're going to share. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this video, you'll find the links to them below the posted video. I teach a graduate course. You will know, Rose, because you show up once a semester as a guest conversationalist. It's a graduate level education course in integrating technology. And I always start that course by showing this video, which is the YouTube video of a TED Talk. It's not a new one. This was recorded maybe 15 years ago, posted here on YouTube 12 years ago. The great Ken Robinson, who is just a wonderful, wonderful progressive, I'll call him progressive education theorist and advocate. um, and the title of this TED Talk was How to Escape Education's Death Valley. Now, he details, and I recommend every educator and parent and beyond watch this short 15-minute-ish video. He compares the classic traditional version of school as education's death valley. And in that vein, he explains and gives statistics of the massive, he doesn't even talk about absenteeism, he talks about dropout rates. And he goes on, he extends that saying for every kid who drops out physically, there are many more who drop out mentally. They tune it out, they're just not there. And so, I think the dropout rates don't lie. The absentee rates don't lie. It's not just that there isn't family support. It's not just that kids don't feel they belong. It's, as he would say, we're boring them out of school with a variety of education that's not relevant. And if you want more detail, he's far more convincing than I am. Watch the video. But another supportive item is this. Now, this is even older. This happened a quarter century ago. This is Dr. Sugata Mitra, who's originally Indian and went on to teach as a professor and education researcher in the UK. He did this extraordinary thing a quarter century ago, Rose. He found a slum in his native India, and he got permission from the owners of a shopping mall. Now, this was a place where street kids congregated just outside the mall, and he placed some computers facing the street in the wall. And the kids, anyone actually walking by, had access to the computer in the sense that they could use the track lever instead of a mouse, and they could use a keyboard and manipulate the computer. And this goes back to the day when knowing how to use a computer wasn't second nature. 25 years ago, this was a bit of a hurdle learning how to use a computer. And so what happened here is that the local neighborhood street kids, many of them without shoes, unwashed, undernourished, showed up and taught themselves and one another how to use the computer. And I cite this simply because it backs up my understanding after so many years in schools that when you provide something for kids that is really compelling to them, really grabs them, they're not going to miss it, no matter what state they're in. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they will show up and get on board. And that's the sense of this conversation that we're having today. And frankly, I think the entire field needs to have this conversation. Why aren't we providing every kid with something so special every day? It doesn't have to be the whole day, but part of the school day, just enough to make school the place I want to be. I'll leave it at that. And you can comment, or we can get on to your first item, which I know you really wanted to talk about, reading wars.
Okay. So I just want to, I certainly concur with what you said. And I just to make an end comment on what you said to react to it, I think that that conversation, no, keep going. Go ahead. I think that your conversation about absenteeism, yes, this is conversation and we're wondering why. And I would say, and that'll be an intro to this reading thing, we've got to make it the kids will want to go to school. Yes, they need parent support, but in some cases, the parents, particularly in certain family structures, or one parent isn't even there to support and to get them to school, they will go to school if they're, for instance, a free library, a student, a school that's known for the choir, a school that's known for the debate team, a school that's known for doing parades, a school that's known for certain things and goes and does outreach and appears in the neighborhood doing those things. And other kids, they hear about it from siblings, etc. Now, the reading wars. Here's another. So we have one conversation you just started us with, absenteeism. Anybody in the field has been hearing this, and now it's going, and yes, it's because it's boring in there. And after the pandemic, we had a lot of time staying home, and we can fall through the cracks even if we do get there. But here's
You, you
one.
know, you know what, Rose? I'm just going to interrupt for a second because I'm going to forget to say this. What we're saying here about uh, schools inadvertently driving kids away from the mission of schools, so many of our experienced colleagues believe that too. It's just uh, many of them are worried it's kind of heresy to say it, but we're here to say it because it's something that needs to be acknowledged. So,
Oh, yes, that's why we're disrupting. We're
We're disrupting
disrupting to
this.
fix.
Okay, on
Okay.
to reading wars,
Reading wars. Now, as you said to me when I proposed this, you might say, well, wait a minute. This is something, yeah, the reading wars are happening, but it's happening among, teachers, educators, people, as you can see from this particular thing, school groups of parents and publishers and concerned school. They're going to war over the reading results. Okay, but this has nothing to do with fixing the schools, truthfully. This is some elevated conversation. And I, of course, also have my own view on it, and it has nothing to do with kids. Unfortunately, these wars, there are casualties, and they're the poor kids seated in the school who want to be absent, perhaps, or who don't have reason to go to schools because they're stuck now with whatever curricula wins the war or won the war a few years back and has now been bought by a school district, and the teacher, who's not a natural disruptor, is forced to go lockstep with that curricula because we want to get the proven data-driven results that show that the students have improved according to that curricula and its set up assessments or the standardized assessments. And what this means in terms of reading, and reading is the most preeminent one in these discussions, although there are also discussions about the fixed social studies curricula and the fixed mathematics one and what type of one. But what this means is that there's a war. There are 5 pillars of reading: phonemes, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and then comprehension. And the war is between, are we doing all 5 in sequence, and are we focusing on phonemes as a start and phonics versus, oh my, maybe we focus too much on comprehension. And it's resulted for the poor kid sitting in school who may want to be absent in a focus on this lesson must be about phonics. I don't have to read the whole book because I don't have time to do that with the kids, but let me go through each part of this curricula excerpt that tests for or teaches for vocabulary or teaches for maybe it teaches for fluency. Let's read aloud to see that we can read aloud. And I would like to make the kids insiders in it. Now you might say, oh my God, what are you talking about? Maybe in high school, third grader can't be an insider in the reading war and discuss it. It's ridiculous. No, it isn't, because it's really about how do you learn how to read, and what does reading mean to you? Not in terms of, oh, do I know the phonemes? Yay. Oh, I know the phonics. Oh, I can put it together. Oh, I can read, live every moment, laugh every day. I can read by rote. Yay, I'm fluent. Comprehend. Well, let's see.
I think,
Moment. All right. So the point is, I say that let's get some of these big issues and let's have the children take a period. Again, you and I are not suggesting, oh, throw out everything that's being done and let's just disrupt and recreate the school while things are happening the whole day. No, I'm saying take a period or two and tell the kids, this is why the curriculum is this way. This is why we have those objectives. And what do you think? Every child that I have done this with knows, and I fought you, Professor Gore, to talk about this. Every child, if you ask them, likes to reflect on when they knew that they were a reader. And it wasn't when they scored 100% or got all the items correct in the phonics test or all the items correct on vocabulary. It was the child will tell you what book and how they figured out that, oh, I actually can read. And many of them will tell you who taught them. And that's interesting, and how they learned. And some will say they looked through a book and this was being read to them, or and then suddenly it clicked in their head what was happening, and they wanted to go back and read that book, or they were reading to a younger sibling. Children, they may not be licensed teachers, but they all have younger, or they're helping somebody else out. And that, talking about reading making kids insiders in this war so they understand why the poor teacher has to teach 27 lessons and we must do this assessment today because somebody's going to look at us, and because the technology, we have to do this assessment on October 28th so that then the literacy coach can look it over and see how we did. Let them be insiders. Let them write a memoir of how they became a reader. Let them talk about what they think the process is. Let them, do they want to read novels versus do they want to read excerpts? Let them get involved. And in fact, there is a backward movement. Many parents in my district, District 20 and District 20, parents are starting to complain that they're not reading these novels. Now, I'm not even commenting on the war, but I'm saying if a big thing is impacting the children every day in a classroom, then the children should have a chance to find out about it on a grade and age appropriate level and to comment about it, because they're the casualties of it. They're suffering
I got
when
it.
there's a war. They're suffering. The children suffer, by the way, and this politically is true when there's an actual violent war. It's the children running out of Ukraine and trying to get away, and the children in other places who suffer. Let them know. And it's also fun, and they often tell me, by the way, that writing these memoirs, they begin thinking about the methods, whether they're going to become teachers or not. They begin
Rose.
thinking. They have
So
ownership.
what I'm hearing you say is that because this is considered the ultimate important item done in school, uh, so much attention is put on it in such a formalistic, theoretic way that schools have dehumanized one of the most wonderful parts of being a human, and the kids, we could say suffer, but how do they suffer in
They never learn what it is really to read
and
unless they were readers
they
to
have a
start with.
miserable time, and they don't learn to read. So, with your permission, I'm going to riff on this for 2 minutes, and I've labeled this Mark's frustration. So the first item here is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. That's the nation's report card. Just read this. The average scores in reading and math for 9-year-olds in 22 were higher than the earliest assessments in the 70s, but lower compared to previous assessments. And this is just a bunch of, in my irreverent opinion, Ed speak gobbledygook. And when you look back over these tests, it's always compared to the last test, it's a little better. Compared to the last test, it's a little, but how are we actually doing? Here's something from Scholastic. Only about 1/3 of elementary school students in the US are on grade level. And of course, those grade levels are somewhat arbitrary too. And so I turned to Google's AI for the ultimate here. Yes, there's growing frustration among employers regarding the literacy level of American employees. 1/3 of employers believe their average employee doesn't possess enough literacy skills to perform their job effectively. And so at the end of the day, whether you're a follower of Miss Calkins or now the science of reading, which existed in slightly different form before Miss Calkins. It's like, we go from heads to tails to
And
tails.
she is not entirely, nor is that movement entirely against phonemes. They
Right.
never.
But my point in this is whichever way you go, because it's not presented to the kids in the proper context, it doesn't work. I mean, it's right here. Only 1/3 of those kids are on grade level. Only 1/3 of graduates can perform their job from the literacy point of view. And so I'll just add one final thought, which goes back to our initial premise that every kid has to have something wonderful to draw them to school every day. Why isn't we need a fifth? You mentioned five elements of reading. Uh, we need to add the sixth element of reading instruction, which we'll just call inspiration. Kids need to love learning to, and that's probably more important, or at least as important as the other
And
five.
I would say I for involving. Many of these things fail because kids are not involved. It is top down, pushed from somebody outside the whole area into it has to involve the kid in the classroom. Now you can only
Okay.
disrupt the classroom by that.
Final point and question on this, and I don't want any more than 60 seconds from you, but we're asserting that learning to read, teaching reading can be made nourishing and wonderful for the kids. Now, you've been a literacy coach for decades, sorry. Um, you're not going to give any examples now, but we could do that in subsequent conversation. Are there examples of where that's been made to happen?
Well, I would say the read aloud movement, the whole read aloud movement, the concept of kids learning how to read to real kids, younger siblings, or
I just
distance
wanted to
kids, and to
reassure.
make it audible. That's the way to make it exciting. You involve the kids and you actually go through digitally. I just grabbed this book as you were talking. This is how we do it. You go through page by page. You get the kid into your head the way that you read when you see pictures and words, and you model it through with getting the children to feel what you feel. But that, of course, isn't scheduled according to the lesson where they're supposed to
Okay.
be focusing on character traits.
I just wanted to reassure my students and any colleagues who are listening that we're not just advocating something, we're advocating something that's proven. And I'm sure you could provide weeks of of examples. Okay, moving along quickly, because I don't want this conversation to just be about what shouldn't happen. There are in our inbox, our mutual info stream, there are so many examples of wonderful, life-affirming, inspiring stuff for kids to do in school. We get it every day practically. So here's one that caught my attention. It's about art at, integrated into science instruction. So now I love that idea. I started out as a visual art teacher in middle school, and it's my first love. And yes, there are many ways that that because I mean, it's so sad, Rose, how such short shrift is being given to the arts in schools. And oftentimes, when I've spoken to principals, they don't really know what art is. And I don't fault them for that because they learned about whatever impression they got in the same public school system, New York City, that they in turn became teachers and then principals in. It's like a vicious cycle of not benefiting from the wonderfulness of the arts. Anyhow, yeah, that's a concept, but what I loved is that there's this example. So, and this example is about the East Marion Elementary School, which is in Mississippi. They have a full arts integration program. So now arts integration is doing the arts in the context of learning the core subjects, ELA, math, science, social studies, in that context. And I can think of many ways that if that's how kids have to get their art, and if that's how their art is made relevant, so be it. Let's do it. It makes it makes being there and learning just potentially a wonderful experience. Of course, many teachers will say, well, I'm not an artist. I don't know how to do this. Someone who taught art for well over a decade, I'm going to assure you it's not that hard. But what's particularly heartening here, let me just read the highlighted part from this article. And again, the links to this article and all of them you'll find in the notes below the posted video. Research suggests that incorporating art skills like sketching or movement, I guess that relates to drama and dance, into science education can help keep students focused and develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. That's what we want. We want kids who learn how to think and think for themselves. And yes, I mean, I kind of blanched a little bit at the word research. It's like to legitimate these ideas, they've always got to say, oh, this is research based. And there's nothing wrong with research, but it really is not the be all end all of, one of the wonderful things about being an educator for a few years as you begin to develop instincts and intuition, and you know when something's gelling and working. And what else did I highlight here? The East Marion Elementary School is one of 20. I love this. So there's a whole network. This is not a one-off example. One of 28 art integrated schools in the Mississippi Whole Schools program, which was developed by the Mississippi Arts Commission. Bravo, kudos. We so I what I gather is that a lot of work and investigation and trial and error went into this. So they've got a whole program that's good to go. And anyone who's tempted to do this, maybe I'll contact this Arts Commission and see if I can interview them or get some links to their materials because there's no need to start from the timid square one. Well, oh, I don't know how to draw, so I'm sure they've handled that and handled it well. So I'm going to leave this particular item there, Rose. Kudos to Mississippi. And again, there's the link. And the final item is one from you, Rose. And so apparently, one of the things I love about your work. So now let me just explain to my students and colleagues who are listening that you're in, as you said before, you're at Ditmas Middle School in Brooklyn every school day, working with the kids and the teachers. And I've come and visited a bunch of times. And one of the things I love about uh, the direction you've helped that school steer itself in is it has a rich community culture. The school is a community of learners, has a rich learning culture. And one dimension of that is, and this is largely to your insistence, are school-wide events. So having said that, what do you want to add here?
Okay, so we have, this is not, this is, purposely sent you a sample, you know about Ditmas, and again, one could say that that's sort of where my programs originate, but this is a school-wide event that's happening in South Point. I immediately picked up on it. It's a parade. Now, some people might say, oh, well, parade, very expensive. That's going to take more than 3 periods to prepare. But notice the joyous faces of the kids there in that photo. They want to come to school. They're not going to be absentees. Notice they're holding posters. They've integrated art. They know why they're there. And they're connecting with first responders, nurses, EMTs, and they're showing gratitude, but they're not only showing gratitude. It mentions in the article that they've had, the first responders have come into the school and talked about their work. The kids have visited. Remember, if you're in any school, you probably can walk to the neighborhood fire station, which is a fabulous place to take kids of all ages and find out what they're doing. And the kids know their impact in the kids' lives where they live in the neighborhood. And the kids have meaning. I can see the joy and excitement there. And I am going to say what's in it for the kids. Well, I'm going to say that that's those kids and like the kids in my school. We do a day-wide soapbox speeches thing beyond the district. When we get together in that auditorium and we disrupt the day with 3 large assemblies for each grade to go and to listen to all the kids in the class give their soapbox speeches. When we do that, the kids know as individuals, they want to come, they want to they hear their culture. Oh, this one was talking about bullying. This one was talking about immigration laws. Yes, the lawyer for my family didn't do a good job either. Oh, this one mentioned trips. We haven't had enough. They know they're a member of the school community. It's real. It's not that they read in a book. This is a soapbox speech, and this one was delivered at Speaker's Corner in London in this year. This is what's happening here, and we have a body of work. And these events don't cost anything. I'm writing another article, which I'll give to Dr. Gore at some point, but it doesn't, the school has already an auditorium. Every school's got that. They have some kind of an outside area where you can parade, where they play ball or whatever during recess. They've got a block. They've got uh, stores near the school who will hold up the posters and who might sponsor and give some refreshments, and people who will come. So they don't need to rent like the city and get a permit and spend thousands. I'm not talking about a gorgeous float like a Macy's parade, but it is the same
Okay.
concept.
I
So,
want to play devil's advocate here, though.
oh dear.
So, yeah, here it comes. So, I don't want anyone listening to think that this is necessarily the school sucking up to the neighborhood community and using the kids to do that. So, this isn't just we're
Well,
having.
this is born out of, you can see over here, this is born out of actual work being done, and the kids who planned and did that thing, just like the kids who do
Good.
soapbox in my school or culture day in my school, they research, they create art. Maybe it's not the most great, terrific art because
Doesn't have to
we
be.
don't- whatever, they create art, they research, they plan the event. They have to schedule. Yes, the teachers and the
So,
administrators look over. So they're doing things that are done in the real world because there are event planners in the real world. Community people schedule things.
okay.
Events happen. I participated in 3 last week, protests and things. I held a sign.
So,
There was
Rose,
somebody telling me,
we could look at this as the school providing a platform for the students to think, investigate, research, do oral histories on
and
it.
be a proactive citizen now. If
And
you They won't be absent if they learn how to be present proactively with words,
good point.
not punches. Then it's going to be good for the future too, not only for them in the classroom wanting to come to school so the absenteeism goes down. This is the
And
future.
and if the teacher, you and I are always advocating that the teacher not just be implementers of curriculum, but become authors of some curriculum, creators of some activity. And in that context, teachers can use this type of event to give kids rich voice and choice opportunities.
And you can read
including if they
this
don't agree
now
with
and
you
make a
then.
video so that the kids can see next year what the class from last year, the school grades from last year did, and my cousin so and so, my friend over there. And now I'm going to add my voice. I'm going to become part of this powerful community. That's why I want to go to this school with the first responder parade. Maybe I'll be in it next year, or I'll get somebody I know to be in it, and I'll be part of this. It's an ongoing thing, like the real world, hopefully.
Okay, so that brings us again and again. We sifted through, I don't know, 40 items to get to these four. But for now, this is our initial stab at doing something like this. So that brings us to the end of that. And before I have the last word, I understand you wanted the next to last word. Eh, No?
No, 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 no. You have, this is yours, and I think, Professor Gora, that this is a much needed conversation. Not only as your wonderful idea here for a podcast, but I think teachers in schools, instead of talking about how to implement and stick to the standardized curriculum, maybe teachers in school should talk about how can I sweet sauce and disrupt a little bit so I can fix up education and make something meaningful every day, and the purpose for the kids to get there and for myself to be there and have some joy in this process.
Well, now that you've triggered the thought, I want to mention, and I know that there's another conversation that I want to have with you and many others. It's about because we come across teachers who love teaching because what they're doing is interesting and exciting. So ultimately, this is not just for the kids. I mean, uh, I can think of many colleagues, and it's the way I was in the classroom, and you were and are too. There's just there's a wealth of benefit from from taking whatever it is, whether the chance or the effort or the shift, as I like to call it, to making the school learning experience something wonderful. Having said that, thanks for joining me. I'm going to stop the recording now. Okay. And I need to stop the recording. This interface is difficult. There we go.